Easter kicked off Thursday to go to the airport to pick up our eldest. I read most of the way with a learner driver. It was a late night home, so we had a bit of a sleep in. The kids spent Friday morning baking while I worked on my quilt, starting to unpin it. There was so much unpinning. I kind of just sat there, chucked an audiobook on, and pinned away while they got some cakes baked for morning tea, and the hot cross buns were just about ready to go in the oven. I was just waiting on everyone else to wake up. It felt like I was unpinning for ages, and I don't know that I felt like I was really making a whole lot of progress, to be honest, but it was a start. So there's 4 days ahead, but I have big plans, so progress is progress. I also spent some time snipping the binding that I had basted in place, which was basically just the backing folded over. Then I took a break, pulled the hot cross buns out of the oven for breakfast, and oh my goodness, they were amazing. I highly recommend this recipe. And once breakfast was done, our visitors were here. The cakes that the kids had made were our morning tea. And as we sat and chatted, I basically just pulled out my sock and sat there and knitted for like an hour as I worked. So this sock that I'm working on here is the ryegrass sock, which I'm part of the test group for. This particular pair of socks will actually go to my husband. It's the first pair of socks I've ever knitted him, so hopefully he appreciates that one. And yes, it was nice just to sit and chat and knit. It's a fairly simple pattern, so it was easy just to sit and listen and chat along. And then we took a break and we went for a walk up the back forest to show our visitors how the forest is going and all the beautiful green growth up there. Breakfast the next day was a lot simpler before we packed our bags and jumped in the car back to the sock knitting. We went up into the mountains for the day, into the national park up the range to do a bushwalk with the kids. So Mr. Barefoot and 3 of the 4 kids went bushwalking while boy 2 and I set ourselves up at the picnic area, found the table where we'd be spending the day, and we just hung out there for a bit. It was such a peaceful spot. We set up the picnic blanket. I had my Kindle and my knitting and just stared into the bush half of the time. Just listened to these sounds. It was amazing. We had about an hour until the walkers were expected to join us at the picnic site, so we grabbed out the cards and we had a couple of rounds of blackjack. We weren't really playing for anything aside from points and glory of winning and lording it over each other. We're both a little bit competitive. And then when we got bored of that, we played some euchre. I taught him how to play that, which, as a kid I played all the time with my parents. It was kind of their go-to game. When we go for dinner at my grandparents' place, they'd get the cards out afterwards and play euchre, so it was a little bit fun. Then he wanted to stretch his legs and wander around, so I grabbed out my art journal and these cute little watercolours that Carl gave me ages ago. There was a bird come and it just perched up on the tree trunk behind us and stared at boy 2 the entire time. It was quite hilarious actually how fixated this bird was on him. And so I took a photo and then I've used that photo as a reference to sketch out a stylized version of it in my little art journal. It's just a little A6 Moleskine book that I've had forever, and so that was really nice just to spend some time painting and taking in my surroundings and observing patterns and shadows and the nature around me. While I did that, boy 2 got the barbecue started and started cooking up some sausages for our lunch. Cannot beat a view like that for lunch. We ate and then we decided to go for a walk, and it was just so quiet and peaceful. At the end of the path was this amazing little creek and waterfall. And then we drove home, and when we got home it was time to start decorating some bags for Easter. I was so disappointed I couldn't find the bags that I sewed last year. And so I came up with a plan B. I basically just sliced up some Woolies bags, turned them inside out and used a tape runner to join it. And then the kids got to work decorating them with markers and pencils and all different kinds of things to come up with their own little hunting bags. And then once they were done, we were heading out to dinner at the local microbrewery. So it was time to get dressed and back out the door again after an hour at home. The next morning, nice and early, we were out for an Easter egg hunt. We had a scavenger hunt with clues, plus there was also quite a nice little range of eggs just lying around for collecting. The Easter Bunny was very generous this year, and look at what a glorious day it is. We got a game for the kids called Triominoes, so we played that, and then I sat on the couch for a little bit and I got to work. I was determined to get this quilt unpinned today. It's Sunday, so I'm rapidly running out of time. My goal was to get it completely unpinned, rebasted, and hopefully quilted this weekend, but here I am on Sunday morning, still unpinning. And I sat there for probably a good 20 minutes, just getting it all unpinned. Once it was unpinned, then I needed to press it. I actually kept it all together so I could just lay it on the floor and use the batting to protect my tiles as I pressed it together. It's not too bad. It's fairly flat, but obviously being in storage, it's a little bit crinkly in places, and a good press is just going to make my job so much easier. And it's done, ready to pull apart and baste. I did actually pull it apart on Sunday and get started, but unfortunately the backing didn't fit back on, so I pitched a fit and read all day instead. First thing Monday though, I was back on deck. I was into the knitting. We had a day trip ahead, so while Butterfly cooked us a beautiful brunch from scratch, I started casting on the second sock of my Keeta because I finished the ryegrass sock first thing in the morning. I didn't actually video that because it was just so early. So I got this cast on ready for our road trip coming up. And you can just see that glorious morning sunlight pouring in through the skylights straight down onto where I sit with my knitting. It's just so lovely at this time of year to sit, soak up the sun, work on a little project. Even if I did get a bit warm in my black jeans. And obviously there's still lots of Easter eggs lying around. The biggest problem was trying to convince the other kids to not have chocolate for breakfast while we were waiting for brunch because it was just an amazing spread. It was all baked from scratch by her by herself, including the pastry for the croissants, and there was muffins and there was danishes again from scratch, pastries, cinnamon scrolls, and then it was time to hit the road again. I had my Keeta socks that I'd cast on earlier, and honestly, it's probably the best day to be going for a road trip because it was just so wet and miserable. And everyone was still tired from a busy weekend, so it was quite a nice quiet car trip. So I got stacks of my knitting done, and I even made it up past the toe into the colourwork section. So you can see here I'm actually working with two colours, one in each hand. So when I'm doing colourwork, I hold one English style, which is how I normally knit, plus then I hold my contrasting colour continental style. So it's a little bit bumpy on the road here. We take the back roads across to the airport, and yeah, it's a bit bumpy, but once I get into my rhythm, the bumps don't bother me too much. And so I was really happy with the progress that I made. We arrived with a bit of spare time, so we went to Spotlight and I had a lot of fun in the clearance section, getting a few bargains, and then we just went out to the airport and waited in the departure lounge. Thankfully, I remembered before we went through security that I did have a pair of snips in my knitting bag, so I was able to get one of the kids to run them back and pop them in the car for me, and I could just get my main knitting through. Minor moment where she did seem a little bit interested in my knitting bag, but in the end they let it through without any dramas, which is good. We had about half an hour to sit and just watch everything going by and waiting for the aeroplane to come in from Sydney so they could turn it around and load Bear back on to head off to Sydney again. And then it was time to wrap up our amazing, busy, super fun weekend with a big hug to our big boy and watched as the plane taxied and then took off, flying him off to Sydney. And then it was our turn to jump back in the car and head for home. Hopefully to have an early night because I'm pretty tired after everything we packed in. I hope you've enjoyed this little recap and I'll be back tomorrow with another video.